Every one of my videos should start with me pulling up my socks. Kind of like Mr. Rogers. He put his shoes on. I pull up my socks. I hope that the audio's okay from this. It's really windy tonight outside the library, and so we can hear a lot in here, but hopefully the audio's okay. So I want to set the stage for a series or a couple of series of vlogs that'll be coming up later. So I want to, obviously I haven't talked a lot yet about business, and that's, I want to introduce a bit more about talking about business going forward and tell you a little bit about where those are going to be going. So I foresee in the videos that start to come out here soon, there'll be kind of two sets of videos. One of them is going to be about general business talk and talking about your interaction with business, interaction that everybody has with business, and the way that business interacts and is a part of liberty, and understanding your personal liberty and understanding how you exercise liberty, which I'll start talking about here in a second. And then the other one is going to be, I very much believe that owning your own business is a major opportunity for you to control and exercise your own liberty. And within that, I work a lot with people who are starting their own businesses. And some of you are already starting your own business, have started your own business, and I want to give some overview, and I want to do a bit of a series of basics for those individuals, and some straight talk for those people. But I think that series of videos is going to be interesting to you whether you are starting a new business or not. And it will give insight into what I'm thinking about business and things that I think business owners should have in mind and so forth. And I don't want you to think that any one of these videos is not for everybody. They really are, but I'm going to set aside a series of these for those of you who are considering or have your own business. There will be one set that will build over time of videos for those people, as well as my more general overall part of my philosophy, this concept of liberty through business and how that plays in. So let's talk a little bit more there. One of these general ideas is that liberty is freedom in society. So liberty is this concept that I can do whatever I want to do, or I have freedom to do whatever I want to do, but liberty is taking that and putting it within a societal setting in which there are rules and norms and these sorts of things. So one of the ways you exercise your liberty is in the way that you spend money. That until not very long ago, if you had $1 in your pocket, normally I have $1 when I do it, but I realize I set my wallet down already, so I don't have $1. But if you have $1 in your hand, one of the most basic things that we have as a liberty is that I can do whatever I want to with it. That if within bounds, I can't use it to pay somebody to kill somebody else. There are some basic boundaries here. I can't spend it on meth. A lot of places I can spend it on marijuana now, but not on meth. But this basic idea is that if I have $1, I can use that $1 as I want to, and that business is where that $1 changes hands. And it's a great thing because it's this thing in which you still have responsibility for making decisions for yourself. It's really left largely wide open in our society. So for you to get my $1, you have to offer me something in return that I decide is worth $1. And so it's a game that we're going to play back and forth. That if you want my $1, you have to convince me that what you're offering me is worth $1. or $20 or $100 or $1,000 or $1,000,000, whatever that is, and we go through this exchange of ideas, and that exchange is pretty wide open, and it's an area in which there's really the least government control that there is in most parts of our society. That you can generate something, you have something, and you can decide what it's going to take to get that thing from you, the amount it's going to take to get it from you, and I have the dollar or the dollars, and I can decide whether or not your thing is worth that. So I'm a car guy, and I'm going to adjust the camera here a little bit. This is probably really annoying when I do this, but it's still going to happen once in a while. Just realized it looked a little low to me. So I'm a car guy, and I'm surrounded by cars all of the time, and I have cars, a little bit of an eclectic collection. I have cars of different types. No, I don't have supercars, things like that. That's for another day. I've driven a bunch of those, things like that. I've been blessed to be able to do that. But I own sports cars because my family races cars, so we have a series of sports cars that we race. But I also have a street rod. I've got a 1970 Buick Riviera, and various other things we've collected. And between I and my family, my son, we have quite a few cars around here. And it's interesting because people will come up and they'll see something at my house. Maybe they'll see my Riviera or something like that. And one of the questions is, well, is it for sale? And the classic adage among car guys is everything's for sale. Everything's for sale if you've got enough money. What would it cost to buy my Riviera from me? Well, considering that I helped make decisions and stuff, and my dad built it, and it came from my dad, I can tell you it would be a wildly expensive car for you to buy from me. You could easily rebuild it for far less than you could buy it from me. My car, I don't know what the number is, but there is a number. Is it $100,000? I don't know, probably. It probably depends on where I'm at in life. When you offered me $100,000 as to whether or not I could bring myself to say no, because there's the difference between what is the car worth? Well, the car's worth whatever you're willing to pay for it and what I'm willing to sell it for. That's the interesting thing. Now, my insurance company and I have decided that it has a value, and that value is based upon entirely other things. It's really based upon what it would cost me to build another one for. And I could build another one for like $25,000. But what would it cost for you to get it from me? It would take remarkably more than that, because value is built upon things far more than the sum of the parts. That's one of the cool things about it. That's the cool thing about business, is to make a business work, to make money. It involves taking things of one value and configuring them in a way that someone will pay more than the sum of their parts for them. And that space in there is called value, and it's also called profit, but it's more than that. What we do in the basic concept of capitalism is we take things of one value and we configure them in a way that increases their overall value. And capitalism is brilliant at it. It's done an amazing thing in growing the overall value in monumentally huge ways that the world had never seen before. People are often talked to as though to get money here, you have to steal it from somebody over here. The rich got rich by taking money from the poor. That isn't possible. The poor don't have any money, and so you can't do that. But the idea that's presented is the only way that those people get to be rich is by having those people be poor, and that's absurd. Because of the fact that the economy is growing, that if things are working well, which in the history of the United States, it's been working well most of the time, it is not a zero-sum game. It is not, there's a set amount of money and it gets divided up between people. That's not how it is. It's that there's this amount of money and you use that to increase the value and make a larger pot of money. And the pot is growing all of the time. And the pot is growing monumentally faster than things like the population is. And it's a brilliant thing. My favorite part of business is manufacturing. Manufacturing is the most brilliant way of making money when it works. I ran a company for somebody else. The guy was a complete jerk. He stole a bunch of my life. But in doing so, he allowed me to use his company to really figure out how manufacturing can work in this brilliant way. And we actually made bows. We made archery bows, wooden archery bows. And the most brilliant thing is you take a stick that comes in the building. It was a board. And you take a board that was bought for a certain amount, and all we would really do is cut things off of it. We would slowly take away wood until it went from a board to a bow. And the bow was worth dramatically more than the board, and it was worth dramatically more than the board plus the labor would equal out something bigger than that. Thus, the value pot is increased, the total value of things on the planet. We literally made all of the things added up on the planet if you took everything that had value and we made that value bigger. So it's not like a book and I take the book and I give it to somebody else and I've transferred a book and I now don't have a book. And so the total amount of book has not changed. Okay, so there wasn't any value that happened there. But instead, if what I took was a pile of papers and on it I put words and I handed it. Now I took a pile of paper worth one set of value and I gave to her a bigger value, a greater value than that. And she's willing to pay, and people are willing to pay a lot more money for a book than they are for a stack of paper. That is the brilliance of it. And where does that value created? Primarily, that value is created here. It's created in the basics of what makes up human beings. Human beings, given the freedom to do, they can create value from one thing to a bigger thing. And they do it with ideas. And they end up doing it with things like passion and hard work and things like that. But hard work grows the value at a much, the labor piece of it is not as big as the idea piece. This is one of these ones where we're going to part ways with the socialists and the communists. Is the socialists and communists are going to say that the labor was the only thing of value in there. So the worker, this concept of worker, they have the worker should get all of the money because the worker was the one who increased the value. And to that, I say bullshit. The worker increased the amount of their labor. How much and the amount that that's worth is exactly the amount they got. How do I know? Because they show up to do, and they say, I want money. And the employer says, I have money. I want labor. I want stuff done. Okay, what do you want done? I want this particular thing. Okay, I will do that particular thing if you give me this amount of money. And that's what happens. The person does the labor and they're given the money. That's exactly what the labor's worth. Despite the government trying to tell you it's worth more or less or $15 an hour or whatever it is. No, people are worth whatever they're willing to sell their labor for. That is what it is. And so that went up by a very, very known calculable amount. What made it worth more than that? I can tell you, if we took a pile of paper, we just had somebody shuffle it for $15 worth of time, did it make the paper worth $15 worth more? No, it doesn't. It makes it worth nothing more. Nothing without the idea. It is the idea. And what does the idea do? In its most basic sense, what does an idea do to make something more valuable? The idea gets you to part with more money than the original thing's worth. And what has to happen, I've had a lot of ideas, lots of business ideas, and quite a few of them at this point haven't proven to be worth shit. I still think they're worth, but until I talk somebody else into parting with money, the idea isn't worth anything. See, that's the value piece. The value piece is I not only have to have an idea, but I have to have an idea that makes you part with more money than the thing cost. That's the game that we're going to play. You have $1. I want the dollar. I might need the dollar so that I can buy cars or I can buy food, which I'm doing a lot more buying food than cars at the moment. But if I want that, I don't get to make you give it to me. The minimum wage thing comes in a lot when we talk about these things. It was an interesting discussion that I wish I could give you the exact quote of when it happened and so forth, but I read a discussion with the person who at the time this happened was running Pizza Hut. So he was the CEO of Pizza Hut, and in his presentation he's talking about the minimum wage, and he says, here's the thing, so the minimum wage ups my price of pizza, so you make labor more expensive. So you tell me wherever the place is, you are going to pay this person X amount of money. It's not related to what the people are willing to work for or any of that. You come in and you arbitrarily say that to make a pizza, you're going to pay somebody $15 an hour to do it. The problem with that is that does not make pizzas more valuable. And he talked about, he said, I know exactly how much a pizza is worth. To the point where he plain out and said, if I could charge more for pizza, I would do it. It's my job. I run Pizza Hut. I'm the CEO of Pizza Hut. It is my job to make the most money possible. And I'm paraphrasing here, but I make the most money possible. He said, I know every penny we raise the price of pizza, how many less pizzas we sell. If I could make more money by raising the price of pizza, I would raise the price of pizza. Why? Because that's what I do. It's my job. And they have so much data in a company of that size. Their company is so big, they literally can do one-to-one correlations like that. And the problem is that you raise the price of labor, it doesn't raise the price of pizza. And he pointed out the only way that is at all going to work is if you then mandate the number of pizzas people have to buy. Because then it's okay. Because then you're going to say, if you are required next year to buy 12 pizzas next year, and every person in America must buy 12 pizzas, now I'm competing on the basis of I get your pizza purchase. Okay? I'm going to go out there and compete on a whole different game. The problem is that if I raise my price, it immediately decreases the number of pizzas people buy. The company makes less money. And say, well, that's profit. Yes, companies exist for profit. Of course it exists for profit. Oh, by the way, where does that profit go? In most companies, it goes to the shareholders. Who are the shareholders? They're your grandma, okay? Or your parents, or anybody who's got a 401k, or anybody who's got stocks invested. These are not, for the most part, it's not the Elon Musk of the world. It's not. It's everyday people. Most people who have any retirement whatsoever, their retirement account is wrapped up in stocks. Okay? And so it's all of that is tied up in there. Okay? So what are the basics? The basics of business that I want us to talk about is this concept that that we have this free exchange, and the exchange is you want something from me, and I want your dollar, or I have the dollar and you have it, and we're going to exchange it. And you know that it's a game. I believe that you know that. When you go to the grocery store and you go to buy a can of soup, and let's say the can of soup is $1. Did that can of soup cost the store $1 to get it? No, of course not. You know that the store charges you more than they pay for it. Okay? And are you okay with that? I think you are, because you do it all the time. People do it. I think we're okay with that. And I think we understand that the part that you pay to them goes a whole lot of places. It goes to the cashier who helped you. Except they don't do that anymore. We check ourselves out. But it goes to the person who put it on the shelf. There's at least that person. And maybe anymore, it goes to the person who put it in the bag and brought it out to your car. It goes to, there's all these people involved, and it goes to the people who own the company who had to be motivated to put a grocery store someplace where you would like there to be a grocery store. And there's all these people involved. And you're okay with all of that. Now, the big game that's being played is are you going to pay $1? Or are you going to pay $1.05 or $1.08 or $1? How are they getting you? And how did you pick that can of soup? And did you buy Campbell's or did you buy store brand? Why? Do you know why? There is so much going on in the game of figuring out how all of that happens and how to get you to buy this can of soup versus this can of soup. Very often it's this can of soup versus this can of soup. Things like that, like what shelf is it on? Do you realize that what shelf things are on dramatically changes people's buying? And do you realize that you're being manipulated to spend more money for soup than you could by manipulating your behavior to put the most valuable can of soup? And do you realize that the store doesn't necessarily choose to put a can of soup on the shelf is not necessarily the can of soup that they make the most direct money off of? You would think they'd want to sell more of the one that they make the most money off of. Well, yes, but how they're making that money is different, because do you realize that companies will have paid them to put the can of soup there instead of there? Because they're going, if you stick it, we're going to pay you and we're going to buy the rights to the shelves where things sell the best. Things like that. There's so much of the game going on, and I want you to understand that. I absolutely believe that business is a game. I think much of life is a game. And business is a game, and I think that you gain by playing the game better. And most people don't even realize they're playing a game. And so we're going to spend some time talking about that, because I think you can maximize your liberty. You can maximize your freedom in the game by being better at playing the game and winning more often. And you can win more often even in the soup game. And so we're going to talk more about that.